Yo, hey guys. Little test. Alright. I guess we should get started. Sure, why not? Alright. There we go. Cool. And now I turn off the update. Getting things set up by Turtles152. Ooh. There we go. So, if you're looking down and your heart's feeling empty, come over and laugh with us. I'm ShadowSoul720. And do I want to start yet? Hang on. Is the video quality at where it is? Yeah, it needs to be here. Cool. Good. So, what we're going to be talking about today is left brain, right brain stuff. Is your brain rational or emotional? And I guess kind of just figuring out that. Alright, so I should emphasize a few things. I work as a self-employed life coach, that's me. And I work under the umbrella group of Rewind and Evolve. And what else should I tell you guys? If you want life coaching or anything, feel free. Feel free to talk to me, I guess. Alright, anyway. Diving onto this topic. So, this is all just opinionated things. It's not research that I've gone and looked at. Well, the research is from many years ago, so take it all with a grain of salt. And it's more theories and opinions and going through my own personal experiences rather than looking at scientific theories. But if you guys want me to go through scientific theories or you have any that you want to bring to my attention, feel free to do so, because that sounds very cool. If the two webcams, the two, side-by-side bits here, putting you off, I can change that in future videos as well. But I just thought it was a nice little niche thing. So, there's many theories about people who are left-brained and people who are right-brained. And a lot of them seem to dictate that people that are left-brained are rational, they use a lot of logic, and people that are right-brained are apparently emotional and very creative. And there's a few different other tidbits for each side. But my theories don't really go into it that deeply. They more focus on the idea that by default, a lot of our reactions to stimuli in the world are either going to be focused on being emotional or being rational. And it's not to say that you can't be either one, even if you have a tendency to be one or the other. And I see just about everybody in the world on a spectrum that'll go from here to here. And it's not always... you don't want to ever categorize someone as like extremely left or right. But there will be people that have a tendency to think more one way than the other. So I do want to stress all this sort of stuff for you guys, just so you don't get the wrong idea. So, and as far as, like, for example, being creative goes, people that are left-brained, logical ones, right, the rational ones, and I tend to use rational more than logical as well. Just a little tip. So, the rational people can still be creative and are still creative, and the emotional people have a lot of logic behind them as well, and they can be logical, and they can use rational thinking. Just as, like, the people that are rational can also have, like, a lot of emotional control and stability. Like I said, it's just... left and right is more just a term that I use to define people's natural tendencies, right? They're like default reactions to things. So, for example, I think that someone with autism, from my experience, and let me know if I'm stepping out of bounds here, guys, generally tends to have a lot of the left brain stuff going on. I don't know if this is left for you guys, maybe it's right. It's mirrored. So, a lot of the left brain stuff going on. I think I just have to get rid of this little second webcam, otherwise it's going to be too confusing for you guys. Not that one. There we go. Okay, cool. So, the left-brained people, this is left for you guys, I assume. This is way too confusing, isn't it? Hold up, hold up. Maybe I'm overthinking it. There we go. So the left-brained people, now we got it. The left-brained people, I think generally are more towards the autistic sort of side of the spectrum. In conclusion, in comparison to like the whole of society, because they tend to not understand empathy as well at times, and they don't often understand, in general, just as like little things, like emotional connection to others and their own emotional like well-being and those sorts of things. But then on the other side of that spectrum, you have people that are very like empathetic, right? Like empaths and things, that they know their own emotional well-being really well. They look up. They generally might tend to look at the emotions of other people and care about them and that they're being okay, but maybe they'll even like they won't care about themselves enough, and that could be an outcome of it. And they'll have times when, like, say they're getting really angry or upset or something, they might find it more difficult to calm themselves down and take it back a step, and think really rationally about the situation. From a default context, of course, like I said before, both categories, either side, can always get to the point of the other thing, right? We're not purely left or right-brained. And I feel like those are the main differences between left and right. And most people seem to fit into... a lot of people seem to fit into a category where that you can kind of just tell what their default reaction through life has been, either left or right, emotional, rational, and that's kind of just kicked off their learning and how they are as a person. And maybe some of them will talk with their hands. I don't know. Like for example, with myself, I feel like my brain is very much more left, so it's more like rational, right? And the reason that I say rational rather than logical is because I think rational thinking is just like purely matter-of-fact sort of conclusions. It's saying, hey, you know, if a lot of people die, well then there's a lot less mouths to feed, right? It's taking away all the empathy and the emotional sort of stuff, and it's mainly just matter-of-factly on topic. This is the argument. Where if someone's a lot more like emotional and they're more right-brained, right, then they might think the first thing they might think when they hear like, okay, so if a whole bunch of people die, and then they'll be like, oh no, a whole bunch of people have just died, and like that's going to be awful and traumatic, and there's going to be so many people upset, and etc. And they're going to think less about the actual. Yeah, they're not going to care about if it's less mouths to feed. Initially, right? So when it comes to solid arguments, both sides actually have it pretty good. You might think that the rational sort of brain people will get there first. Not always. Because, for example, if we take that situation of like a whole bunch of people dying, if it was just rational people in charge, right, and they were at the top, and they said, okay, well, you know, if we kill off all these people, then rationally, right, logically, we're gonna have less mouths to feed, so that might solve like our issues around starvation. And then if there's no emotional thought at all and it was all purely rational, maybe that's the mentality we would go with initially, and that's what would happen. You know, like a whole bunch of people might just die, and then that's not good. Now, the reason that's not good is because if we look at like the emotional state of being, like the right side of our brain, we realize that if a whole bunch of people die, then there's a whole lot of like emotional trauma, which, you know, the more rational thinking side won't be able to get. So the emotional thinking side will be like, okay, that person's going to be sad, they're going to be sad, a whole bunch of people are going to be sad because they're missing their loved ones, and then productivity and everything else in the world is actually going to be way lower than if we didn't kill all these people off. And that's the really good difference. I think that really highlights the differences between like thinking emotionally and thinking rationally, and why both are equally very important. And it takes both of them to be able to see the world into like in a logical thinking way. Because if we follow our logic and we think smart, this thing up here, this poster, think smart, right? Then hopefully we do consider both the left and the right perspectives. We consider the emotional response and as well as the rational one. And one of the most important things to always take in mind whenever you're thinking is to go self-reflection, right? You want to think about yourself, you want to think about how you actually feel. Not just what's the most productive for you, but also what's the most emotionally sound for you. And what's going to be the best choice and the best way to get there. So, again, you know, using this sort of example, day-to-day life stuff, if I said, okay, I want to lose weight, and then I just decide, well, if I stop eating, that'll work, it won't. You know, actually, that's a bad example, but like, there's probably a way to talk about that, but I can't do it right now. So, sorry, let me skip over that one. Nah, my brain's gone. It's gone, guys. I can't. So let me refocus. Let me self-reflect. Let me tell you guys that I think it takes both perspectives to work. And I think getting to a point where we can acknowledge and use really well both perspectives is very hard. And some people think that being left or right brained is based on your genetics, and it definitely could be, especially to some extent. But I will also argue that it's based on how you've grown up, right? Which in sociological terms and things, we're just looking at culture. So we're looking at like the background that we've had, who we've grown up with, who we've grown up around, who's taught us, how we've learned our life lessons, what circumstances we're in. You know, it can even be as simple as like what school you get transferred to, what state of the world you live in, both like the actual state and country, but also like the circumstantial state. Like if you're in a war, maybe you have to cut off your emotional side a fair bit, and you have to think rationally, otherwise you're not going to survive. You know? And that could be why, if we think about people that have been and lived through wars, they talk about, they're probably very like stern and very gruff, because they've had to think rationally and just shut off the whole like emotions, right? You can't really be a good soldier and follow orders and stuff if you're thinking. And by thinking I mean if you're using like your emotions. Sadly, as far as the greater scheme of being up top and ordering people around and that sort of stuff goes. But that's also probably why you'll see people that come out of wars and they're also very upset and hurt and sad because they don't get to process all this stuff. They have to shut off from their emotions, or they are very emotional, maybe more empathetic than some others, and it just causes huge trauma because they understand everything that's going on around them from like an emotional point of view, and they think about that. Because some people are just wired like that. Like, I'm not that visual. Like, I don't really visualize situations in my head, especially when they're talked about, where I know other people that are very close to me who, the moment you mention something, they've visualized it already. If you said, like, a cactus with a face on top of a bowling ball in the desert, right? They've already imagined that. They've maybe even put like a silly hat on top, like as I'm saying it. Where people that are more rational in thought, maybe they're not thinking about that sort of stuff. At least that's how it comes across to me. Like, in my own experience, I can't visualize that stuff unless I put actual mental effort into visualizing it. Where other people can't help it. They can't shut that off. And that might be a left brain, right brain difference. I don't know. I'd have to do some more of my own research and talk to some more people. Because everything I found that I discuss here and find out is all... So it's my own opinion, but it's also my own opinion because I've had many conversations with lots of people and I'm always trying to self-improve with this. So that's how I come across my information. Just through theories and theory crafting. Yeah. Okay, and now that I've lost the train of thought some... Right, so I feel like whether we're left and right brain can be very much dictated on our culture, how we've grown up. And, for example, the war thing is a possibility. Another one is, say you've grown up with very, I don't know, hippie parents or something. Or maybe not even hippie, but like a family that shows a lot of emotional care and concern. Then they'll be watching out for that. And as you grow up as a child, maybe they're very supportive and caring, and they're wondering like how you did at school and etc. And they're getting you to openly talk about your emotions and feelings. And that's a good thing in a way, right? Because it lets you break down and understand yourself. Because when you understand your emotions, you understand yourself, you understand why you feel bad and why you feel pretty good. And if you feel like life sucks, maybe you're not doing that, or maybe you don't have the time for that. And if you don't have the time to work on yourself, that's very difficult. That's very difficult all the time. No matter if you're like more emotional or rational, it's always difficult if you don't have time. And sleep. I think sleep is one of the most important things. Side rant, sleep is amazing, just the best. Get enough of it, and I feel like you can just do about anything. And you're always going to feel very much happy in my experiences too. And humans, we don't sleep enough these days at all. Not at all. I still think 10 to 12 hours is mint. A lot of people disagree, but I think that's mint. But of course, if you've got the working life going on, like the stereotypical 9 to 5 working life, and you've got some stuff to do around that outside of work, you're probably not going to find the time to get 10 to 12 hours sleep. So I think that about does it actually for this video, right? And you guys might know how to like distinguish yourselves between emotional and rational. Like I said, it just depends on like if you're the sort of person who gets jealous, then you're probably anybody. It doesn't matter which side you're on. If you're the sort of person who doesn't consider their own emotions enough, again, you can probably be either side. But the real way to be able to tell if you're emotional or rational, it's probably just how you're doing with this video. For example, like, if you've been analysing what I'm saying and you're comparing your own thoughts and feelings to it and you're like, is this true? I'm not sure. How's this affected me? Maybe you're rational. It's also possible you're emotional a little bit. The more emotional people, I don't know. Maybe this is boring. Maybe I've gone way too much into like the theory work, or maybe you've just enjoyed me listening and that you get some self-satisfaction out of that, and that's amazing and that's great. And I love you guys for it. And when I say I love you guys for it, I don't know. Hopefully you appreciate that and feel it. And if you don't, that's okay too, because you know you're some random stranger on the internet, so I don't expect that. You like to think you kind of both eat for it? That is definitely fair. That's fair. Let's go into that if you want. Tell me about it. Tell me about it. But I definitely think that I was gonna end the video over here, but I think that we can definitely be both. Like talking from my own experience, and this isn't to boast or brag or anything like that. So don't think it is. And I've still got a lot to learn, but I feel like by default I'm very much like a rational sort of left brain thinker. And I think that because of the way I was raised over my childhood, and I had very caring, sensitive people around me that always be looking out for me and making sure that I'm doing okay emotionally. So over the many years that I've been alive, I've learnt a lot of emotional intelligence and how to deal with that and how to work through it, and how to talk about my feelings. So I like to think that I'm very well suited to both, and I haven't had a lot of time in my life. I've had a lot of time in my life just to be me and do what I want to do, which is definitely something I'm always lucky. No, not lucky. I'm always grateful for, and I feel lucky about. Let me just change this music. It doesn't feel suiting. That'll do. So, because I always feel so happy, I feel genuinely very supported and very lucky. So what I like to try and do is use what I've learned to support others, because people in this world don't have enough time, I think, to really learn and understand about themselves, and we don't learn enough about this sort of stuff in schools, and I feel like that's a really good step where we could start, because if we're starting from a young age and we're learning about how to like be ourselves and be comfortable, as well as like how to, you know, maybe chuck some philosophy in there, how to think rationally and arguments and fallacies, then I think that makes us all much better people. Well, not much better, because you guys are already great, but we learn to self-improve, and we can learn how to do that ourselves before we have to get into a lot of the life things where we just kind of work every day, and that becomes like a reality. And maybe you know, if this keeps up in the future, it won't be like that, and it will still be great, it will still be amazing, and we'll still be working, but in a different context. And if you guys want me to go into a video on that and what I mean, let me know, because I could probably do a short one on that. Anyway, this will about do it. If you guys have any interest in what you would like to hear me talk about, do let me know. Definitely do. The things that I'm pretty good at talking about, I like to think, is anything to do with like mental health, relationships, youth, especially like as a demographic, because I'm still fairly young. I'm 26 and I'm Australian. Tasmanian as well. A little island on the coast of the Big Island, so I'd love to talk culture, differences, people, places. Studied a lot of sociology, a lot of philosophy, majored in both. And if you guys have questions about yourself, about the world, about life, how it is, where you want it to go, I can help with that too. Motivation, confidence. My thing that I try to teach everyone all the time, my life coaching tip that I use is not sure, ask, ARSC, which is focused around acceptance, reflection, developing social skills and confidence. So guys, if you're accepting yourself and everyone else, if you're reflecting, especially self-reflecting, focusing on when you've gone wrong but then you're trying to fix it, as well as developing your own social skills, getting out there and being confident. And by social skills, I also mean like communication, so we can talk with each other and just get what we want to say out. Those are, I think, some of the biggest things, as long as we're always reducing harm to ourselves and others. And that's about it. Ifrit says, you're also good at playing video games, but that's not what this video is about. Thank you, Ifrit. That's, Long live skill. I've got way too many small scale skills that don't matter too much. But hey, we can go into a video on that at some point if you want as well. And with that, that's it. So support each other and take care, guys. And I hope to see you all somewhere. Bye.